Welcome everybody to hopefully not too rainy PD chat show with our regular panel of Rob Bryan. Hi Rob, how you doing?
Hi, my man. I'm very well. How are you?
I'm all good, thank you very much for asking. And Mr. Pete Cater, how are you, sir?
I'm completely fantastic.
There we go. And again, we want to welcome our special guest for this evening, all the way over the pond, Mr. Scott Pellegrom. How are you, Scott? Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
Good, excellent. As I say, it must be a lot hotter there it is here at the
It is
moment.
pretty hot. Yeah, I'm in the basement right now because it's really hot out there today.
Oh, fantastic. So obviously everyone who knows, basically your regulars have been watching this, knows that we basically start the whole evening with a conversation, literally just to open up while you guys are just like enjoying, getting yourself a drink, and also just like preparing yourself for what do I want to ask the panel this evening. So, Scott, your special guest this evening, I want to come to you. You are. Well, first of all, you've been coined the mad scientist. Can you explain a little bit about why they called you a mad scientist?
I think it's just that I have crazy hair. That's pretty much all I got. That's it. Nothing.
Right,
I don't know. I
right.
think it's. I think a bit of it is my teaching methods, and a bit of it is the performing and experimental side of things. I'm willing to take a lot of risk and do some crazy stuff, and I think just like most of us here, we're all raised when once you get the drumming bug, you see drumming and rhythm everywhere you go, and you can't help but want to jam when you're in the bathroom, the washroom with the toilet and the sinks and the shower to the washer and dryer, and listening to the birds outside singing. Like everything to me is music, whether it's the natural world or it's life, the city. So I'm just willing to experiment. And now that we've been locked up for quite some time, things have been getting really weird. So we'll see what happens in
Yeah.
2021.
Yeah. So, well, obviously, we're going to talk about creativity because, joining me this evening, guys, out there, you most probably will appreciate I've got three amazing creative drummers and musicians with us. So, Scott, where does your creativity come? Because I've seen you perform a couple of times, and it's incredible. It's like you start one thing, and then you think, oh, he's going to go in this direction, and then all of a sudden you've gone round the houses, caught a plane, and gone somewhere else with it, and it's amazing to watch you perform in that kind of way. You can see your brain basically do this, but creativity. How did you discover the stuff that you can do? What came to that part where you are now for your creativity? What was the path towards that?
It's kind of a backwards thing for me. It was a bit of like a reverse engineering because when I was a kid, like I mean, my first memories and to even some of my first clothes had a drum on them. I have always been around drumming. I've always been around music, and when I was a kid, the drums were downstairs, and that's where some of my extra toys were. So anytime I was around the drums, if I got bored of playing, I would mess with the drums, or they'd be a part of my fort or my, you know, just my place of imagination. So I spent a lot of time around the drums. And when I was a little kid, I would pick up my drums and yell in them. I found the portholes and I'd blow air into them and hit them. And, I did everything aside from just playing grooves and rudiments. It was just something that was fun. Like I always saw the weird side of drums. I remember kind of like Mardi Gras beads. Sometimes you would get them during, um, Christmas too. It'd be like red and green. And I remember grabbing a bunch of those because I was excited and threw them all over my cymbals and my drums as a kid. And I remember being so fascinated that every time I hit them, the cymbals would sizzle. And this is like I'm 4 or 5 years old, And the same thing with the drums. So like I always got into putting stuff on top. But then when I started getting older, people are like, no, you need to have a pure tone. These are the three grits that you use. This is the touch you need to have. When you're playing jazz, you have to phrase things this way. So I kind of got into this like, oh, it's not okay to like experiment or be different. Like you need to know how to play the Neil Peart stuff or the Billy Joe Jones and Max Roach stuff, and which is great, right? We all need that. But all the weird, fun, experimental stuff and the comedic stuff to me, like people almost kind of shunned. So I just kind of kept it to me. But it became a thing like whenever I'd be practicing a lot of the independent swing stuff, when I get bored, I just mess with sounds, colors, textures with the kick. And, lo and behold, as years go by and developing, top through jazz and fusion and getting into drumline a bit, and then kind of running away from all of that, the weird kind of nuanced stuff became cool because it became effective in writing music. It became really effective in recording music to create sounds, being able to replicate what a drum machine might do, but making it human.
Yeah, amazing. We've got one question here from Glyn Jones. Just before I ask that, I'd just better say a few hellos. Thank you also for watching. Glyn Jones, hello. Dave Brown, Joe Morris, Richie Burns. Oh, so I can't be with you tonight. You've got a gig. No excuse. Kenneth Russell, Ian Stott.
It's got a what?
It's
got a what? Those, yeah.
Yeah, I opened up the dictionary like that to that word the other day. Pete James, William Fraser, hello. Ronnie Blankenship, hi, Ronnie. I think I don't seen you before, so hello, and like our Facebook page. It'd be amazing to watch more stuff like this. Ivor Takara, is it? Alfred, absolutely brilliant. So Jim Argy, thank you guys for watching. Obviously, without you, obviously we'd be just talking to ourselves. But again, we don't mind that. But we love talking and it's like being interactive as well. Quick question on basically what we just talked about, Scott. Glyn Jones says, since Scott plays, amazing. Are you still playing with squeaky toys?
Always. More so now than ever.
Yeah, is that because you got some puppies in the house?
It's the puppies. I mean, the way the whole squeaky toy thing really happened, it was 4, 5, 6 years ago, and it was back when Instagram only allowed you to record like 15 seconds, right? I think that was like the longevity. And like, I'm not tech savvy. I'm not into like, I'm just starting to get interested in like audio and video editing. But most of my life, I could barely plug a cord into the wall. That's why I play drums. My dog, like Pegasus, he is totally comfortable around music all the time. Whenever I'm recording or teaching, he's either in my hoodie or he's nearby or he's sleeping off in the distance, but he's not afraid. And a lot of the times when I would play drums, he would grab his squeaky toys and just come next to me and kind of chew on his stuff while I played. And one moment when he did that, it just made sense to grab the squeaky toy, put it in the hi-hat, quick record it, post it online. And I did that, and then like 2 days later, it, just kind of blew up all over Facebook through Instagram, and then the squeaky toy thing kind of blew up and spawned this weird thing where now everyone's using squeaky toys and double chicken bass drum metal solos, whatever. But it just kind of happened. But it was inspired because my dog was next to me and I heard it. And I thought, oh, that sounds like a hip hop sample. It sounds like something to be in a dance track. And I put it in. I think I played some quarter notes or eighth notes with it and just played a little groove, and that was it. But it was kind of one of those funny things. A drummer that I really, really look up to, that I think is really creative and has some of the most beautiful technique I've ever seen, is Han Bennett from.
He's off there. Han Bennett.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah.
And I remember stumbling across his stuff. Someone sent me him soloing on the Wheels of Cheese.
That's right.
And they're like, "This is going to be you when you're a grandpa." And I looked him up, and then I went deep and was like, "Who is this guy?" And he blew me away because he has a child's mind. He looks at anything and he will play. He'll sing. He'll dance. He'll flop on the ground. He's not afraid to perform or to let it all out. He's not afraid to make mistakes. He'll sit and solo on a chair. It's amazing. And to me, that was just like someone jumping off the ledge. Seeing him doing that was really inspiring and comforting, knowing that there's other players that have done that their whole life. He's someone that kind of inspires a bit of that child's mind playfulness for me. Great.
Pete, creativity, obviously, because obviously we're doing this for, bridging into our 4th month now. We have talked about, touching on the way you practice, but how important is creativity to you as a musician?
Creativity is a state of mind, and it's often said that you hear a lot of very kind of estimable authorities on drums and music and the wider sense saying creativity cannot be taught. Of course it can. It's just a state of mind. it's a habit. If you get into the habit of being creative in your practice on a daily basis, then you get good at it. If all you do is just kind of, get stick control out and play that over and over again, or just play, rudiments, then that will finesse your technique. But it's not really close to the context of what actually happens when you're creating music. And facility is great, but musical context is everything. And what I try to do when I'm practicing, even if I'm just doing my hands, I'll try and do it in a creative way. I'm not wanting to just repeat stuff and do stuff that I know I can perfectly do already. I'll just try to put a layer of improvisation, of creativity on it, and it's a no-brainer. It's not something that is just the preserve of some kind of rarefied elite of players. We can all access this. We can all do this on a daily basis. And it's like anything. If you do it all the time, you get into the habit of doing it, and you get good at it. It's easy as that.
Yeah, Rob, you like, obviously, again, the same with Pete. You've been obviously on here for quite a long time, and obviously people ask you in the studio basically sort of do this, do this, and do this, but you obviously can actually do those kind of things because obviously you just like practice. Maybe it's like, right, this time I'm only going to be practicing so like going left hand up or onto the racks toms or something like that. So creativity in your own style, how did you come about that?
Basically, I spent a lot of time fighting, breaking away from what I thought I should be doing. So, my dad, God rest his soul, gave me all that technique and made me work, but he never gave me that little chance to break away a little bit. So he was showing me all the stuff that I should be doing, and I'm so thankful. But, I think I had to break away from that and rebel a little bit and find out what I wanted to play away from that stuff. So I had the technique, but it's all right. I've got technique, like Pete said, and facility, and Scott as well, with the Max Roach stuff. But what do I do with it? So it was a question of like thinking, well, I could put my left hand on a different drum. I could put my right hand here. I could play what I play on my right hand on my bass drum. So for me, it's always been breaking away from the norm. And like you say, for the session stuff, know what I have to do in that scenario. But when I'm not in that scenario, just really let myself go nuts, set the drum kit up in a different way. I remember working with Andy Partridge from XTC, and he said that he used to set, I can't give the drummer's name now, that's silly, of XTC's drums up in a different way to make him play a different style because he had no choice. So I just used to enjoy doing that, and I still enjoy doing that. And just a thing I've been getting into recently is listening to like pieces of music that I like with a horn line or a guitar line and playing it just with one hand, maybe my left hand or my right, and then my left hand would play what maybe the singer is singing and breaking it up, like crazy things like that. But I did start when I was younger, but I thought I shouldn't be doing it. So I think it comes very much down to the end of the day, you have your technique, but a lot of this stuff comes from your character and how crazy you are and how experimental you want to be. And I think it's good to come off of the beaten track and to do that. And I've been saying to my pupils for the last 4 or 5 years that you have to do that. Otherwise we will end up in the same kind of place. You have to go down those little roads. You think, oh, I shouldn't go down there. I always say to my people, like, go down that road because you don't know where that's going to end up. So take your technique with you, obviously, but then see what else you can do with it when you're down there. Have a little route around. And I think that's really important. And it really worked for me.
Yeah, I think that's actually really important because I actually myself, in my teaching, so I give them the tools, but then I always say, you've got to keep playing because that's when you can actually discover when you can do things. When you physically just like go, well, actually, I've done what I need to do for my lessons and stuff like that, but let's just see what we can do. And that's when the creativity comes, isn't it? When, as I say, you go down that path of, well, let's just go off the beaten track and see what happens. But how important is sound for creativity? Scott, how important is sound? Because I know you've obviously, with Dream Cymbals, you created lots of different sounds with different cymbals on there, but how important does the sound basically... does it enhance the creativity for you? Does it influence your creativity?
When you're asking that, are you asking specifically like what companies you're using, or just
No,
the
no,
sounds of
the sounds, like, because obviously out of one, because a lot of people think, snare drum, you get the snare and you get a rhythm, and that's it. Well, as we all know, there's so many different sounds you can create on different drums, on different cymbals, on different percussion instruments and stuff like that,
Right.
mixing things up. So, how important is the influence of sound in your creativity?
The biggest thing that kind of changed my life is by 1 year attempting university was Northern Michigan University up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in Marquette. It's a beautiful area right on Lake Superior. Um, and I studied with Dr. James Strain, who, I'm not mistaken, released the encyclopedia for percussion last year at PASIC. Brilliant man. And when we met, he saw something, he was interested in me and saw a little light in me, and he kicked my butt, and he basically said, like, what you need to start doing is you need to look, and you need to visualize what a whole note is. You need to visualize what an eighth note is, right? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, how do I do that? And he said, check this out. Grab a snare drum, let's get our brushes. And we have a snare drum, we have our brushes, and he said, okay, look, here's the clock, right? So you know where you're starting, you know where 6 is, right? This basic clock. And he said, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. There's your whole note, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Half note, 1. You can go on and start saying, with your brushes, if you're counting whatever BPM you're at, you can move and visually see and hear what a whole note, half note, quarter note, eighth note, so on and so forth, do is staccato. So now you're not just thinking staccato or legato, because the joke is play an eighth note, play a whole note, play a quarter note, right?
Yeah.
You have to see it, because we're not using air to push, right? We can hit something and just let it resonate, and then we choke it out. So when he got me studying on the whole, like, seeing what you're playing type of thing, it really got my ears into hearing things legato and staccato. And then naturally, because I'm using brushes and snares, I wanted to use my fingers more on the head to push and pull sounds. And then I realized, what do the tension bolts sound like if I'm using the back of the brush? And then it led to this, whoa, the snare drum has a billion sounds. What if I do that now with a hi-hat? So now throw away the snare drum, I go to the hi-hat, do the exact same thing, brushes, sticks, mallets, fingers, hands, play, the tension rod to the clutch to the legs, and just go all the way through. And how does it sound if the pedal hits wood floor versus a concrete floor versus rugs, right? What does it feel like when I'm on an unstable stage? And then I would go to the ride cymbal. And then I literally took the kit completely apart and just bass drum only for a month or two, practice time, like devote my love and passion towards the bass drum. And then I would come home and, do my gigs, do my stuff with the full kit. But when Dr. Strain said, I want you to visualize what notes kind of sound and look like, I think a bit more like a vocalist or a horn player, that changed my life. And then through that, I discovered all the sounds, colors, and textures you can get per tool you're using: brushes, sticks, mallets, fingers, credit cards, whatever the hell you're using, right? And then decided, let's break it down to each individual instrument to know its limitations, or the limits it doesn't have, if it's limitless, right? So that's kind of where the sound, the color, and texture became really important to me, and realizing that the drums literally are about as expressive as the human voice.
Yeah.
We have the volume from up here to below. So the sound is very important, because even if you take away chops or you take away weird textures, when you say, someone like Steve Jordan, his drum sounds, man, his groove, his feel, the way he produces, everything sounds and feels good. And it goes back to that groove thing. And if you have that palette in your head, you have that, database in your brain, someone plays something, you go, I know what I need to use on this, right? Or I know what might work, and you can go through stuff and not be frustrated. So I know that's kind of a long-winded thing there, but that's a topic that means a lot to me, because I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it was very insightful, because obviously it's when I was at college, having that kind of performance element, because I was doing a classical. Everyone knows me, so it's a classical degree. One of the guys had said, visualize the note you want to play before playing it. And it's like, what do you mean, kind of thing? So it's there. I'm going to play it. Well, no, is it going to be? What color do you want it to be? It's like what tone you want. So it's all that kind of stuff. So for me, that makes perfect sense. And it's just like it's just jogged my memory on that. So thank you very much for that, Scott.
Isn't it fun? It's fun.
Yeah. A couple of hellos. Brett saw me. Hello. Pete Coggins, Paul Lucera. We've got Mike Michelle. Michaela, sorry, Andy Kennedy, Paul Dyson, Kay Nicholas, Brian Johnson. Thank you, guys. Graham Martin, thanks very much for watching, guys. Brilliant. Regarding on that, I've actually got Kenneth Everett has actually said, "Hi, question for Scott. What do you think of using splashes? A few years I bought one. It increased to a few, and I used it so many times." In my band, they love the way simple use of them, and I remember you always have a number of different ideas, use a range of ideas on snare drums, etc., and stuff like that. I've had to put a few punctuations in there, so hopefully it made a bit of sense. So the use of splashes, I suppose it's colour, isn't it?
I love splashes. I recently, this year, I mean, I've always liked splashes to throw on a floor tom, or I'll throw it, splashes fit great just on the hi-hat rod. You can just flip them over and they're there, and you can hit them, they'll make their noise, you can take them off if you want, throw them on a snare. I think they're great for all of that sound effects. They're making your snare pop. But I've been using, because I mean, I'm a jobbing drummer. I teach private lessons, I do session work, and then I go out and do clinics and stuff. But if I'm not running my trio or my quartet, I'm jobbing for other people all the time. I'm doing weddings, I'm doing corporate events, I'm doing casinos, I'm doing, that house concert, stuff like that, right? I'm working all the time. And I found that splash cymbals allow you to be in a lot of these small environments, like a winery or a microbrewery, a cafe or a wedding. And you can kind of give some pizzazz and some flair, but it's not going to hurt anybody's ears or get in the way or be too big. So like when I play out, I usually use like kick, snare, hat, ride, sometimes a floor tom so I can put a beer on it or a bottle of wine, right? That's what they're there for. And then I usually bring like a bag of random stuff. But recently I started bringing a couple splash cymbals, one to throw on the hi-hat and one to put in front of me, and I use them as my crashes, and it allows me to have fun and go a little crazy. But some of the gigs you're doing are super low volume. So I love splashes. I think they're great. Stuart Copeland and Tim Alexander from Primus were the two that blew my mind with splash cymbals.
Yeah. I'm going to open up to the panel as well. I'll come to you, Pete, next. Splashes, are they your favourites, or do you use them? Pete?
Sorry, you just broke up there.
Sorry.
Ask me that again.
Yeah, sure. So splashes, I say, do you use them? Are they your favourite? Oh, Pete's frozen again. We had this issue last week. He's there? No?
No.
Rob, I'll come to you. Yeah, he'll come back. If not, 'cause it looks like he's thinking about it, so it may take a while. You never know. Rob, use of splashes, just to basically answer Kenneth's question.
I love splash cymbals. I grew up listening to Manu Katché with Peter Gabriel, and he was like setting them off like firecrackers, man. They were just like on their album So and stuff. They're just like popping all over the place, man. And and Stuart Copeland, of course, So yeah, I love them. And of course, back in the day, it was Buddy Rich, wasn't it? With that single 6-inch on there. And during solos, you do all kinds of different things that you don't always see on the YouTube clips, but you sort of mess about with it and play different things and play like a bass drum thing against it and stuff, which is very old school, Cozy Cole stuff, really, but it's dead funky. So yeah, man, I love them. And then I saw Johnny Rabb back in the day putting them on a snare drum, doing all that stuff, and that really inspired. Actually, that was one of the I don't think he gets talked about enough, really, but Johnny Rabb, man, I tell you, when I used to see him putting those on his snare drum, way, as far as I remember, way before anyone else that I can recall. It was really inspiring. So, I tried that. So I bought a 6, an 8, and a 10. And I realized that the 10 could be a bit too much, but the 6 and the 8, you could just speak with and you could play off of, man. And like Scott said, it doesn't get in anyone's way. But I must admit, I went down that road a bit too far, and occasionally some artists I'd worked with would say, you know, you're doing a bit, you're giving it a bit too much of the splashes, man. So I had to take them off. And then I left them off the kit for a long time, and they're still in the cymbal case. I must say, I don't use them very often, and if I do now, they are on a floor tom or something else, and I'm working off of them. But man, yeah, I love them. I think they're fantastic instruments.
I have to touch base because you brought up Johnny Rab, and I think he's someone that needs to be talked about more and more and more and more. He's an incredible person. He's super smart. He's really innovative. He's brought a lot to the drumming industry. You know, I mean, he's created a lot of stuff, like his rhythm saw sticks back when he had his own company. Mind blowing. Like, he was like light years ahead of everybody. The drum bowl, the splash cymbal stuff, the freehand technique, teaching it for rudiments and like how to stagger it. Like, Johnny is the guy, man. He was one of those people that I sought out and had to study with to be like, where the hell are you coming from? What are you eating? What planet are you from? Like, how are you thinking this way? Because he's someone who could take a snare drum, one stick and a splash cymbal and rock your world.
Yeah.
And make you laugh.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and pretty amazing. So splash cymbal, cool. Johnny Rab, great.
Yeah, for those people who have blinked and the screen's actually moved for them, Pete basically went to find a splash cymbal and come back again, I think. That's what it was.
I was here the whole time.
The whole kind of splash cymbal thing, what's the splashes for you? Do you use them? Are they your favourites, or?
I mean, no, not really. Only in the old school big band concerts. I did go through a phase a few years ago where I downsized all my crash cymbals, and instead of using like a 16 and 17 and an 18, I went down to like a 12, 14 and 15, just for that really short decay, and because it was really, really easy to phrase with them, because you could play them, you know, quickly and they die, and you could play them again. You haven't got this long tone that you get from a big crash cymbal. And I just did find that using, I don't know, it's probably 30 years ago that I was doing this, having multiple small crash cymbals, not going down to the splash cymbal where you're really in that very, very high, like 10K frequency range, but just still in the crash cymbal frequency range, but with really, really short decay. And it made, when we were playing a lot of fusion in the early and mid 90s, it made it really, really comfortable to do using those smaller cymbals.
Yeah.
But now I've gone back to like, you know, 22-inch ride cymbal and a china and some hi-hats and nothing else.
Nothing else. Few hellos. Dave Johnson, Paul Fox, hello. Mum and Dad, hello. You're my favourite people. Taking my kids away for the week. Thank you very much. And David Lebson, hi Scott. There we are. So there we are. Just that reminds me, because it just seems to be there's some kind of fashional phase or something like that. People are going to larger cymbals just recently over the last, last 5, 6 years that I seem to find. Why do you think is that? I'm going to come to you first.
Can I jump in and tell you why?
Please do. Yeah, please do.
Why guys are doing like 17-inch hi-hats?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me tell you why. Because they see a drummer that they really admire, like Steve Jordan, for example, doing that. And they say, oh, Steve Jordan's playing 17-inch hi-hats. I've got to get some 17-inch hi-hats. Whether or not it suits what they're doing or not, they just kind of tend to follow and just do the thing. It's like the 40 BPM practice thing that we've talked about so many times previously. And people tend to follow what the example is from the drummers that they most admire, whether or not it's appropriate for their musical needs or not. And we need to kind of take a step past that and think, well, okay, this works for this guy, but is it actually going to work for me? You know, before you lay your credit card down and buy a whole load of new gear, you really have to be very honest with yourself and say, is that what I need or is it not?
Yeah, I agree with everything, Pete, but I think if I just come from personal level, it's like, if I go back to like about 6, 10 years ago, it was that kind of, I wouldn't have anything bigger really. It's like my 20-inch ride, that's big enough. It's like 18, it's a 16, I've got 15, I want to, kind of thing. So it all blended in. Obviously, we're in the fortunate situation that, it's our job, so we have to have tools, so we have many things of everything, to suit the situation. But I don't know, so I've just really been observating over the last few years or so, when they do their own personal thing, not necessarily in situation, people seem to start having larger symbols. It's for me. I'm getting older. Hard to believe with my youthful looks, but it's for me. My ears.
No, I think you definitely are getting older.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks so much. It's that case of I want things slightly lower, and because obviously we have these things, I've Rob put me onto
Wait, when you say lower, what do you mean? Do you mean lower pitch or lower?
Lower pitch, because obviously you're not too worried about like the rings or the wash and everything, because there's things nowadays actually it's like you can put inside the sim pads, kind of stuff to take all that kind of stuff away. Without actually involving taking the harmonics or that kind of thing away, really. So for me, it's not that kind of issue. Obviously, I would not play it in a small situation because that's just bonkers. But is there anyone else? Am I talking, absolutely rubbish here, or has anyone else seen like a trend for larger symbols over the last few years for their own kind of soloing personal projects and all that kind of stuff? Not necessarily for gigs or scenarios they can't physically play them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. And to be honest,
sorry to interrupt, but all manufacturers as well, they're bringing out larger symbols as well, aren't they? Obviously, I know this it's teasing the people to buy their money. Go, we've got this brand new larger symbol and all kind of stuff. But but sorry, Karen.
No, all I was going to say was actually for me, it came from sound engineers. And people that were saying, have you got a crash that's a bit lower? And I'd be like saying, well, I've got this 18, it's quite heavy. They were saying, yeah, but if you've got like a 20, or could you play one of those rides as a crash? And I was thinking, man, I don't do that. That's not my bag. This is like 2 or 3 years ago. And then I started with a new cymbal company, Vulcan, and they started sending me bigger cymbals. And I was on a session, and I put an 18-inch, it was like a 50s vintage crash ride up on my left. And they said, do you know what, that ride that you put down there that wasn't right for the track, could you put it up here as a crash? I said, that's a 22. And he said, yeah, but I love the tone of it. And I said, okay. And I ended up, which is totally not me really, but 18-inch crash ride as a crash here, 22-inch ride as a crash here, and then a normal 22-inch ride here. And it sounded absolutely fabulous. And it kind of blew my mind because, as I say, I was always 16, 17, 18. That's the only crash sizes I'll ever look at. One of my favourite drummers, Ian Pace, uses 20s and stuff, but that's his thing. I would never go that far. But you know what? The minute you start changing your mindset, and again, we're talking about creativity and sound, the sort of length of note, like you say, Matt, it gives you is a totally different wash and a different sound than a 16 that kind of comes up and goes, rah, rah, and sort of bites at you. At 18 or 20 opens up in a different way, and all of a sudden I find that I played in a different way. So now I'm more than happy to put my rides up as crashes. If somebody says, can you give me some longer, deeper tones, I'm like, yeah, I'm completely in. And I'm almost a bit upset if I've got to put a 16 or 18 back up, because it's like I want to get the bigger tones on there for that very reason.
Yeah. David Lipson says 23 rides, yay or nay?
Yay.
Yay, Pete?
Yeah, well, look, if it sounds good, listen, ride cymbals and hi-hats are like gravy, okay? You have your dinner and you've got your meat and your potatoes and your vegetables and no gravy. That's like having a ride cymbal that just has no overtone. The overtones are what pulls everything together. The ride cymbal and the hi-hat cymbal belong in the frequency register of the score, whether it's a big orchestra or a big band or a pop band. Everything's got their frequency registers, and the ride cymbal and the hi-hat knit all this stuff together. This is why we like bleed in the studio. This is why we like leakage, because it's the gravy. It's what pulls everything together. Those frequencies, those overtones that pull music together and just make it sound nice. And in some circumstances, a higher pitched hi-hat is going to work better. And I personally, I'm not a fan. I can see them from here, a pair of thin 15 hi-hats, and they're too low pitch for me. They're just too, they haven't got the bright top end. And, you know, if you, and I was doing a thing online with a great drummer, Duffy Jackson, the other night. And if you really know how to play the hi-hat, you know how to pull the whole frequency range out of a pair of hi-hat cymbals. It's a little bit of a lost art. And sometimes it's important to, you know, it's you rather than the cymbals. And you know, there are variations here, but just being able to draw the optimum amount of frequencies out of a pair of hi-hat cymbals is a really special skill, and it's something that's not talked about maybe as much as it should be.
Well, too right, I think, yeah. Dave Brown actually agrees, dead right and true. Kenneth said he loves his Sultan 22 ride, very shimmery sound, but can also be used in many situations, which is great. Scott, you've developed a few cymbals with Dream, haven't you? I can remember, I was just trying to think when I saw you in Leamington a couple of years ago. I think Dr. But there, you had, was it a 22 or 20? It was like a crash, but you were actually bending it when you were playing it. You was leaning over it, and I was just like, "That's great, that's great." And
I've seen Scott do that.
yeah, and it's fantastic. But how do these things come about? How's the process? Because I say, I think people actually love to hear the idea, because obviously they are artist symbols. They're your symbols that you want to play on. You want to, you know, you've developed them because of your creativity and everything else. So how did the relationship work with creating those kind of wacky kind of symbols?
Well, I mean, we started with some of the paper thin stuff years and years before that came out, and we were getting some that were so thin, like you'd have it on the stand and look at it and think this is going to be glorious, and you hit it and it goes, whoa! It's just like it's something that just stuck up. They're like, oh man, what do we do? You know, it still sounds good, and you know, they spent a lot of time and they got it right. But I remember when we had been through quite a bit, kind of making notes on what worked and what didn't work. When it really happened, it was glorious. And the thing about it is, like what everyone has said so far, like one, it's got to be about your hands and about your sound. You have to be your own sound engineer, and you need to be able to pull out the frequencies and get what you can with whatever gear is provided. Two, you need to train your ears and your sound palette inside and out, to know what you need to lay onto a track or for the right gig, right? You know, you need to know all these different sounds. That's why it's even good to go into a music store and hit every damn cymbal possible, so your brain starts registering what a Zildjian this and a Sabian that or whatever it is. But what I've found, because a big part of what I've done the last 4 or 5 years has been in the studio quite a bit. So we've been using everybody's cymbals, whether I'm on the track or someone else is. The lower range frequencies always mic up beautifully. The bigger, fatter, thinner cymbals that you barely have to hit and just ignite mic up beautifully. Exactly. You don't have to work. They do their job. You're not fighting them. You know, there's not this a barrier you have to break through for them to make noise. You can just hit them and they do their thing. Yeah. And I think it's beautiful because it works on the player's touch. And, you know, what Pete was saying earlier was spot on.
Yeah. I'm just thinking back to like what you're just saying, Scott, is I was very heavily, I love my physics, you know, how things work, and it's like, you know, how sound's created and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, learning like how to play stuff like tam-tams, you know, warming 10 minutes, but it's like the molecules are like working together. How important is it, do you think, for especially, well, we're talking about drummers here, but musicians in general, to actually know how their instruments work to actually get the maximum potential out of those instruments? Pete, I'm going to come to you for one, because I think you've got really good ideas on this. So the maximum potential, do you think, to actually understand, to get maximum potential out of, say, the cymbals, out of the drums, you've really got to understand how they actually work?
Well, first of all, the sound that you get from a drum or cymbal all comes from your hand technique. It comes from how you hold the stick in your hand. And everybody is different in that regard, just in the same way as brass players and woodwind players all have different preferences for mouthpieces, for reeds, because their embouchures are different. You have to find what sounds good for you and not be too led by, what your heroes in the industry. Somebody is playing a pair of 17-inch hi-hats. Okay, that might be right for them, but it might not be right for you. I mean, I'm sitting here at the moment in a moment of reverie, thinking, "Hey, I'd like a 29-inch ride cymbal." And why? It, it's about how you hold this in your hand. That's where the sound comes from. You give 10 drummers the same ride cymbal, you get 10 different sounds. That's how it works. It's not production line. It's not conveyor belt. Every musician will get a different sound out of the same instrument in a kind of sterile laboratory type of circumstance, if you wanted to put that to the test. And that's great. That's exactly how it should be. We should all get our own personal sound from the instrument in whatever way is necessary to make music.
Mm, mm. We've got a couple of hellos before we move on. Steve Funnell, hello. Steve Claw, Shane Funnell and Steve Claw. Dave Lipsom's just come in here to quickly while I'm doing this. Scott, I saw you wake. Oh, Scott's back. Yeah, Scott's back. Scott, I saw you wake up an unplayed cymbal at a show a while ago. It involved some focus brutally. What do you do to a new cymbal and why? There we are. That's from Dave Libson. Actually, people who don't know Dave Libson, he's the UK Dream cymbal liaison. So he looks after Scott basically when Scott comes over to the UK and Europe as well, doesn't he? So yeah, thank you, Dave, for introducing us to Scott. Thank you very much for that. So what do you do to a new cymbal? Because he looks brutal when you do it. And why? And why is the most important thing.
And why? Yeah, it's a thing I've found, specifically like when I was working with Dream cymbals over the years, after playing with all the different companies and a lot of people using different lacquers and stuff for the looks of the branding or the sound, all that stuff, right? But I was always a fan of cymbals. Like I was always looking for like the Zildjians and the weird old Zildjians and stuff that were like gritty and oily, and I just always felt like they had a lot of personality. And when I started working with the Dream stuff, I noticed that like they really didn't have a lot of finishes, so I knew that the cymbals would age beautifully, right? And the more and more I started to work with the stuff, like with that 22-inch, paper thin Bliss, I knew there's a lot of flex. I could feel it. And with these cymbals, like you were talking earlier, with things trying to settle, right? Because I kind of want to fight. You get some brand new cymbals that have not been played and they've been shipped somewhere, and then you're going to sit down and play them for 60 or 90 minutes. They're going to be opening up while you're playing them. So I try to get them to break in and warm up a little ahead of time. And it's real effective, especially with the bigger cymbals. And I just throw them down on the ground and I start jumping on them. I walk around them and get them to pop and to wobble. And it's amazing because you can take a ride cymbal and hit it, put it down on the ground, walk on it a bit, roll it around. I'll drop it on its edge a little bit, and then you play it again, and it's a different cymbal. It's already going through. It's like kind of that whole philosophy of change the drum head in one sitting for 30 minutes, and you've done like a lifetime of changing drum heads. It's kind of the same thing of aging a cymbal, of like put it through a lot of stress and get it going, and you're going to know if it breaks or not. And if it doesn't, it's going to last you a long time. So
I suppose that's the kind of thing when you hear people say, "Oh, that needs playing in," you can hear it needs playing in a bit. You're physically playing it in before you even play it, aren't you? Yeah. Yep. Rob, you look after your cymbals beautifully, immaculately, don't you? Fiona Barnes, hello. It's obviously there's a reason. I think I may be going wrong. I don't know, Pete, if you're on the same. But I basically everything goes in very neatly. I have to have it, all kind of, it's like make sure they're in their own blankets. It's like transportation. But am I doing it wrong, or so because of that kind of rawness and so sometimes that you want that cymbal to be played, don't you? I say I've got a couple of cymbals. I think, do you know what? In a couple of years' time, that's going to sound awesome when I start playing it. But the cymbals for you, because obviously you've helped develop different cymbals when you're obviously with Bostrus, obviously you're now with Vulcan. What difference is it for you, these kind of playing in a cymbal, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I've always there's a video somewhere of me at a studio, and I'm going to film this take, and I'm playing this ride cymbal. It's in a studio local to here, and I stop playing, and I take my headphones off, and I take it off, and I throw it on the floor, and I stop jumping on it. And it's around on the internet somewhere, and I think, oh my god, he's having a bit of a hissy fit. Oh my god, but it's like, no, it doesn't sound right. You know, this cymbal could sound nicer. And I remember saying to the engineer, look, you know, when I stand on heads, you know, and get them to sit, I'm doing that with a cymbal. You know, I'm getting it to sit, and I listen to this. It's a bit, yeah. Can you hear the difference? You know, and I thought, God, is it me just losing my mind? But I knew it worked. You know, and I remember Bob Zildjian many years ago when I did some working with Sabian for a little while. He sort of taught me. I spent an afternoon with him, and he taught me what I should be looking for in cymbals and stuff, which was, you know, thank you, Bob. It was amazing. And he was saying, you know, don't be afraid to give them a little bit when you're playing them for the artist, you know, like it's okay, you know, they bed in, they can take it. So all that stuff to me was kind of familiar. But I've never seen anyone do it on the stage, you know, so that's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, well, Scott does, yeah.
That's my brother right there, you know. Yeah. So yeah, I was aware of it, and I've done it myself, but never actually during a clinic or well, I did that session, but yeah. That's the only time. But I think it's important to know your instrument, you know, feel the instrument, and really get to be one with the instrument. You know, people love drumming friends of mine sort of giggle at me for that, but I'm really in for that, you know, like taking the heads off, feeling the shell, smelling it, getting the heads back on, really knowing your drums inside out. They're your best friends, you know. And I did a session last week, and I actually took all the heads off before I started the session, which, you know, it's kind of unusual for me. But and the engineer came, I said, what are you doing? I said, I'm just going to let them breathe for a bit, because I heard them playing them, and I thought, no, I'm not going to tune it out. Whatever this is, I'm not going to tune it out. I'm just going to let the heads come off. I was there dead early, an hour before anyone else was, you know, going to get there, even before the engineer, but he was there dead early. So I just let them breathe, top and bottom, and then I put them back on again. I never wasted anyone's time, and I didn't really waste my time, because I just wanted to let the shells breathe again, put the heads back on. I wasn't going to put new ones on, the same ones that are not pitted, but they've been well played. Put them back on, and do you know what? It just sounded warmer, almost sounded vintage, though that it wasn't. And just you know, I feel I have to let my drums breathe. So all that kind of thing, I'm totally down with, especially over the last 5 or 6 years. I've really been getting into that. And I know some of my students laugh at me and say, man, you're mad. I'm like, well, maybe, but no, I'm not, because it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. The thing is, a lot of people don't realise how much actually your drums change from literally from the gig, put them in the cases, keep them at home, bring them out again. It's a completely different instrument, isn't it? Because obviously, you know, atmospheres, like, you know, sound, all kinds of stuff, they're different. You know, they could be hot as you like in your garage, and then obviously the difference in the car, and then we take them to a different venue. And yeah, it's right. Pete, do you have any quirky? So we talked about this quirky cymbal kind of stuff. Do you have any quirky cymbal habits, I suppose, like the other two?
No, not really. I mean, I've got a lot of cymbals that I've had for a very, very long time, and what happens when you hit a piece of metal repeatedly, it's going to do one or two things. It's either going to get softer or it's going to get harder. That's what happens when you hit a piece of metal. And cymbals, you know, they age, they develop, and if you play a ride cymbal, if you're kind to it, if you kind of nurture its sound, then it's just like a drum. I can remember getting new drums that sounded terrible when they first arrived, but you know, after a bit, maybe 6 months or something of just playing them, and you know, the instrument has to get to know you, just like you have to get to know the instrument. But by the way, Rob, nice to see the Joe Jones record in the back of the shop.
Oh yeah, well spotted.
This is a rare thing. It's the double album, man. I've got it.
I have the very same. I have the very same.
Good. I knew you would, my man. I've got a load of vinyls there that I got from my mum's garage. Loads of Louis Belson, all sorts of stuff. But yeah, this is awesome.
You can tell Pete's had his eyes done. That's amazing. I didn't even spot that. Well done. One done.
Please don't talk about me. One eye's done.
Yay!
Paul Fox, hello. Such great advice a privilege to hear all of this great advice. Despite buying a set of Zildjian's 13 inches Oman hats, having heard Pete play them, I particularly like his comments stressing the need to match gear with our own needs. It echoes stress on developing skills to enable development of our own licks, fills, etc., rather than relying on cliche stuff. Really sound advice. Thanks very much, Paul. Yeah, as I say, it's it's like I think we said many times. I think we said a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, guys? That I think I can't remember if it was the manufacturer on the one before, but actually, why would you buy it's like a symbol? And so they moan about it's like there's a chink in it, through the post, and it's like, well, go to your stores, support your local stores, then go, play every single one. And so use what you said, Scott, play every single one so you know what exactly sounds, and then obviously, does it sound to you? When I get a new symbol, I always reserve the fact that I will hold on to it, until I actually put it in my set. Also, does it work with that particular set, or like, can I combine it? If it doesn't, it doesn't matter how good or expensive it is, it goes to somewhere else. Do you know what I mean? So it has to. It's just the musical sound. I always come back to this phrase: the color of it. It has to match the color of yourself and also everything else. Talking about the colors, Scott, you have all these symbols. I talk about symbols because we just hit on the dream stuff. And to be honest, during these sessions, we actually haven't talked about symbols much. So, Scott, with the development of the symbols and everything else, is there anything that you want to take, like dream to a different place with symbols, or are you happy where you are with symbols at the moment, or because your creativity mind, just like because you've had lots of time to think, as you said earlier, is there something? Do you know what? I want to see if that works. Is there anything in the future that you're working on in your own mind?
Yeah, right now I have a list of probably, I should double check my notes, probably about 13 new ideas of products that I want to try. Most of it I haven't seen done yet. So
Can you tell us a little about anything, or is it top secret?
Not really. No. Can't tell you too much. I don't want to give anything away here. Come on. Yeah, I have quite a few lists, and I've been like kind of back to like weird mad scientist things that I've been down here like, sometimes I'll just stare at gear and say, you haven't mated, like used to be stacked on top of each other. What happens when you're put here? So I've been doing a lot of that because I love gear. I love drums. I love cymbals. I love microphones, even if I don't use all of them. I like to hold on. It just feels good, right? And like I always think about with the gigging drummer, the working drummer, the self-employed, you're doing studio work, you're working for other people, you're doing your stuff, you're jobbing, you're busy. There are small little things that you need all the time at certain gigs that would help, right? And there's certain things with volume and dynamics that could help. There's a lot of stuff like that is all I can say that I've really been working on, just to help the working drummers, the jobbing drummers that are out there, making ends meet on the hustle, having stuff that could help them in certain gigs. So that's kind of where I've been at with this whole lockdown. It's just like going through and finding my favorite things. But for the most part, with all the weird gear I collect, there's a 22-inch small bell, basically a flat ride, and a 15-inch like Swiss hi-hat. Those two I use almost on every gig, every session, one way or another. The 22 flat usually is used as a crash sometimes. Like you were saying earlier, Rob, like, hey, that sounds amazing as a crash. Use it only once in the song, and it'll be the most epic crash of the whole song. You're like, okay. So it's kind of been that aspect. That's where I've been at. A lot of times I think about all this stuff that I have, and I'm looking at all this gear that's collecting dust. I always find a couple things that I just love to use all the time, and it's hard to stray away. So there's that end too.
But guys out there, if you got any crashes that or any symbols that you think that I can't live without, please put in the comments below, and obviously we can see it as well. Everyone else can see it as well. Hi Paul Winter, thanks for watching. Dave Brown said that Joe Jones LP is now on double CD. Just on that, I just want everyone's opinion: CD or vinyl? Pete.
Vinyl.
Pete, CD both.
For me.
Why does it have to be either or? Why can't it be both and? I love to I love the ritual of playing vinyl, but you know, sometimes it's just easy. You know, I can't play a vinyl LP in my car. Not that I've got anywhere to go at the moment. You know, it's just,
right.
why do you have to have these silly trade-offs?
Haven't you got a turntable? You've got one of those big phones, haven't you, in your Merc? You know, so why haven't you got the turntable?
Yeah, it's, you know, I had to have the suspension recalibrated.
All right.
So the needle.
You just stick to your 8-track. You're fine in there. You're fine.
No, eight tracks were terrible. They were. I don't know that 8-track cartridges. When they put an album onto 8-track cartridge, they cut a track in half.
Yeah.
And it'd be like this, you know, and then so and so continued. It was just. It was just probably the worst format ever.
The reason why I asked that, because it's the 8-spec, because obviously, you know, we know the CDs, the whole compression thing and all that, and it didn't really dawn on me. It was a few years ago now. It was Tony Blackburn on Top of the Pops on Radio 2. I was obviously driving to a gig, so it was obviously Saturday afternoon. And he did his whole show from the 70s, and he played everything vinyl. And there was stuff I was hearing just from the car speaker that I wasn't actually hearing, you know, day to day in my own like CDs or anything else. And it just dawned on me, like, actually, I need to go back to vinyl because there's something about it, isn't it? There's, you know, it's like going into that press and everything else with those grooves, and you know, nothing's compressed. You can hear different things happening, and what a marvel! Just basically a tiny little needle, just basically going through grooves. It's a wonder, isn't it? Scott, do you record on vinyl as well as CD? Well, on digital now, or is it both?
It kind of seems, I mean, like most of the artists that I'm recording for and working with, like, you know, there's still like kind of like the old school, like everybody still needs CDs, or they want to have the spine. So if you're sending out the radio stations, you can be organized so people can pull you out and see you. But you know, most of the people are kind of going on, which is kind of sad, and it's a bummer. But it's, you know, you're just like, well, I'm going to pay all this money to do a digi-pack and release everything online so it can be streamed and people can find it. It looks good and it's released, and you know, blah blah blah. People have the CDs so they can send out to some stations or, you know, press kits for festivals that actually want physical stuff. But other than that, everyone's like, we'll just do a pre-order for vinyl. You know, everything else, they're just going to go and record, put out all this money into this beautiful record and just release it, and then hope that people pre-order the vinyl.
Yeah, as I say, it's definitely making a comeback, vinyl, isn't it? It's I don't know if it's that kind of retro thing. Yeah, it's something else, isn't it? It's I think we talked about this was it last week actually, about actually buying like rather than just like streaming. I think it's important because obviously for me I can see Pete's. So I suppose that's just a pinch of your collection, isn't it? Just over to your right shoulder of your collection of CDs on there. Yeah,
this is about 2% of my CD collection.
Yeah, but isn't it so nice when you actually sort of look down that spine, and then so you get to. I love reading. It's like, you know, who's involved and all that kind of stuff, and
totally. Look,
and you know,
let me. Can I sum it up for you this way? You
please.
Can't put a download on a shelf. Okay?
No.
You can't put a download on a shelf.
Yeah.
So just the What have we got here? Joao Gilberto, Amoroso, fabulous. What have we got here? Bernard Purdy. Still here from last week. Hank Mobley.
Dog Station. Yeah.
Patrick Williams. Sinatra Land. What have we got here? Joe Henderson.
Yeah. You're doing your own version of Shuffle now, aren't you? It's amazing.
Barry White.
Yay! The Love Orchestra.
Sweet, yeah, Shuffle.
Tito Puente. We have
Beautiful.
We have records here.
But you know what, Matt? I'll tell you what. If somebody only heard that record behind me, or any of those records that I've got here on vinyl, on MP3 or CD or whatever, and it inspired them to check out more, then I'd be happy. You know. Yes, I could be
happy to give them away, or
you know, I could be sticking them and say buy it on vinyl. But the thing is, if they say, "Hey, Rob, I've got a download of that Joe Jones, the Drummers album, and I love it, and it inspires the hell out of me," then I'd be happy. You know, that's just my particular preference. But you know, if it inspires people, I don't mind where they find it. In a way,
yeah,
you know, it's as long as they get inspired by it. YouTube, whatever, you know.
Right. Am I also spying a ghost pedal there as well?
Yes, you are, sir. And can I just say, I've also got, via Tristan at Dramatic, a Speedmaster as well.
We actually was discussing about this actually in the green room last week, weren't we, with Chris Bennett and everything. And Rob's obviously been a bit of money.
Don't tell my wife, gentlemen.
No,
And the Ghost pedal as well. And I've got the Ghost and the Speed King, of course. So I've got my trio of going back to our vintage chat we had a few weeks ago with Simon and Tristan. That is when I used to look in the Ludwig catalogues from, bygone days. I used to look at those 3 pedals and think, oh, I want them. Now, whether they're actually particularly brilliant pedals doesn't matter, because in my mind, I've just always wanted those 3 bad boys. And now I've got...
you know the story about the Ghost pedal, don't you? It was designed by a dentist. Yeah, the Ghost pedal was designed by a dentist, and he took it to Buddy Rich and said, "Buddy, I've got this new bass drum pedal that I've developed that's going to make you play faster."
That's
Buddy
right.
Faster than who?
Yeah.
And that's the Ghost pedal.
I'll tell you what, both of those play quite well still. I was in Tristan's shop yesterday or the day before, and they both play really nicely. But obviously, they're not going to take a hammering. But on a little jazz gig, both of those pedals and that Speedmaster, which is even older, with that leather strap, man, it plays.
Yeah, well, the Speedmaster was the budget Ludwig pedal of its day.
Yeah.
And they had the reversible one, which you could turn around and it would play the cocktail drum from underneath.
Okay.
You've got the red Speedmaster. The other one was the blue Speedmaster, which you flip around and play a cocktail drum from underneath. I mean, for me, I've got a Sona double pedal bag just over here out of shop, but it's actually got 2 Gretsch floating action pedals in there.
Oh no!
Which I take with me on sessions because they're better than anything. But I take 2 in case one breaks down, and keep a pearl pedal in the hardware bag just as a standby.
Yeah.
I mean,
while we're talking about this, Scott, do you like the vintage gear? Do you play? Do you own it? Do you have anything that you go? Do you know? Actually, I have to play on that. Are you a vintage guy?
I love all vintage gear. I don't have a lot of vintage gear. I just started collecting recently, but my favorite are the pedals. I've come to find, like, at least in my opinion, I could be wrong, but I feel like, just as the industry develops and rock and roll is becoming a thing, people are trying to find ways to, make gear that didn't break on stage for stomping and smashing. But like, when it comes down to like the Speed Kings and stuff like that, those are some of the greatest pedals around. I mean, they're sensitive. They do what you want them to do. I think a lot of the gear right now is developed to like survive the apocalypse versus like actually work for you.
Right.
That's why like I love those pedals with a leather strap or nylon, because they really connect and they follow your body and what you're giving them. They're not fighting you at all. Same thing like talking about certain cymbals that ignite when you just give them certain energy. They still have a tone. You don't have to like, there's where the sound comes out. That's how I feel with a lot of the vintage gear. The moment I sit behind a Rogers kit, I fucking fall in love, because they sound beautiful and they touch and they have tone and there's everything that I want them to do. So yeah, I'm a big fan. And I actually have a buddy I met up with earlier today who collects vintage gear and repairs it, restores it beautifully. He has a drum museum of drums I didn't know exist. I have to do a walkthrough of his gear because it's like tear jerking to see what this guy has. It's amazing. But we were hanging out today and he was restoring some old bass drums for me. But the same thing, he gets all the gear before I do, because he's in my area, and all he does is go to all the museums and the vintage shops and the estate sales, garage sales, and every day he sends me pictures, literally every day. Look what I found. And it breaks my heart. But I got a recording studio to buy some gear off of him. But I'm a huge fan. Even all the Tama, some of the first Tama pedals, even in the 80s for Tama, just are unbelievable. I love it. I don't want a footboard on my pedal. I want something that'll sit right on the floor and adjust to it, and not be, because you always get that weird rise now if something's uneven, and then you have the back of your foot pedal smacking weird. No, you don't have that. So I'm a huge fan of the vintage gear. Huge fan of it all around. I want a lot of it, but I don't have enough money.
No, for that kind of stuff, no one has enough money for that. Couple of hellos. Thanks for watching, Edwards, Bernatak, Susanna Forrester Fake, and Dave Phillips. Dave Phillips says, "Hi, Scott."
Hey, Dave.
And the gang as well. So Dave was on a few weeks ago. Absolutely brilliant. So it's thank you very much. I say if you are watching for the first time, please like the Facebook page that the Palace Drum Clinic's on, and you see more kind of things coming like this up, including lots of different countdowns, PD countdowns. Obviously Instagram as well. We've been doing a lovely little series called the PD Conversations. It's only half an hour long, usually on a Thursday evening. And also go to the website. Do that again, which is palacedrumclinic.com. Lots of videos on there of past. You'll see Pete, you'll see Rob play, and hopefully in the future you'll see Scott on there as well. So there. So a complete contrast to what we were just talking about vintage. Paul Fox has actually asked you, do you gentlemen make use of electronic drums? Now, obviously Rob and Pete, we've discussed this many times, but Scott, where do you lie on electronic equipment in your setups?
I just honestly, like this year, I had the biggest epiphany above all because I like to consider myself a dinosaur. I like that I don't have to plug things in and deal with channels and cords and batteries and all this stuff, right? But I went out, I bought, it was my pandemic purchase. I got the Yamaha EA.
Your PP, yeah.
I went out and I got the Yamaha EAD10, fell in love with it. I think it's genius. I think it's one of the coolest products that is on the market, and it's an amazing teaching utensil. So my mind is blown there. And then I started years ago with Drumcraft and gave up out of Germany with a prototype electronic kit. And now the Gewa Workstation G9 is going to be releasing this year or early next year. So I'm waiting for that kit to show up. And basically, I'm at the point now where like I'm finding a way, I'm really close, so I can be using this crazy kind of drum kit, percussion, electronic hybrid thing, and being able to use loops and guitar pedals, effects pedals, and all this stuff to be able to perform live. And be able to take even more time when I'm doing the trio to have like solo percussion moments to display the dynamic range of drums and the colors and textures. So I'm in. I think it's cool. I'm really inspired by it. If you would have asked me that a few years ago, I probably would have said absolutely not. But I'm really inspired by it right now. And like what KJ Saka is out there doing, what Mike Bennett has been doing with tours and in the studio is really inspiring. And yeah, I think it's kind of a new thing. It's combining the synthesizer with a grand piano, you know, two different things and find a way for them to make love. And my computer's going to die, so I got to plug it in. So I'll be back next. Pass it on.
Okay, I will pass it on. Just a couple of things. Joe Moss, how do I find you on Instagram? Go to Instagram and just follow us hashtag Palace Drum Clinic. That's absolutely fine. It's very, very simple. We've made everything simple because I am simple. So there we are. Roseo de Rodriguez. I hope I said that correctly. Thank you for watching. Again, like our Facebook page. Rob, I've seen on your news feed this week on Facebook and Twitter, the Lindrums come out.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'm a child of the 80s. I think we spoke of this before, you know, and our dearly beloved Mr. Prince, who's no longer with us, was a genius in mixing live drums and Lindrums. I know people like Stevie Wonder have done it before, but Prince was way more inventive with taking each channel out of the back of the Lindrum and putting gates on stuff and things like that, which no one had done before. They just thought, oh, Lindrum's a drum machine. It does this. And it does a lot more than that. And then there are other people. Peter Gabriel as well was really good at programming. And it just really, you know, inspired me. So that hybrid thing that's going on at the moment, that's been going on for years, really, in different ways. And I've been doing it since the early 80s badly, you know, back in the day, trying to get little units that would work. Then the Alesis HR16 drum machine come out and I'll play with that, you know, and program that. So I've always been in love with the two. As I say, my father hated that sort of stuff because he was very much a jazz man. But I think deep down he knew that the future was coming and that I was influenced by that. So he let me follow that, you know, that route. But I'm up for it, and I still am. And all the projects I do, even with Arena, I'm up at the moment on this tour that has been stopped because of the pandemic. But I'm still triggering loops on that, and that's like a Celtic ethereal gig. But I'm triggering loops for that, and before that was Susie or Hugh Cornwell or whoever. I'm completely in love with working with it. But I know there are a lot of drummers that are really against electronics, and even working with clicks and things, they find it very, very difficult. But thankfully, I've always enjoyed it because it gives me another dimension to what I'm doing. So you can be Philly Joe Jones on the drums or something, or you can pretend to be, but that sort of thing. And then you can look at the electronics, and that suddenly opens up a whole different world. And when we were going back to creativity, which was the first question of the night, that's where it really opened for me, because then I thought, well, I could add these extra sounds, this extra loop, this extra sort of drone that comes over the top of my drum solo. My goodness. And actually, if I can say, I actually, in one of the bands I used to perform with, it was only in clubs and pubs in Bath, but I used to, should I say, I had a very spicy sample taken from a certain sort of movie that I thought was quite art house to play over the top of a drum solo, and I would move with the activities of the sample. And I can't go into any.
Would that sample come in towards the end of the drum solo?
Absolutely, and it would get more climactic towards. And I remember, and I saw it as art. I saw it really as an art thing. And I remember someone walked up at the end of the evening and said to me, "Rob, I've come to see you playing with quartets and all different bands and things, and I'm very offended by this." He said, "I don't think it's cricket, basically." And I was like, "Look, it's just expression. This is like art, baby. You could hear what was happening, and I was just literally moving with it." But yeah, electronics for me, yeah, man, love it. And I'll never stop experimenting and try and get better at using it. There are people that use it really, really well, but there are times I just like to be au naturel, but there are times when I just want to have it there to add things to what I'm doing when I'm, making my own music and writing, and just want to be creative in a practice room. I love having it there.
Pete, can I ask you this question? Because obviously, on your newsfeed, as I don't stalk you two, but I do. You actually talking about electronics. We know you're not an electronic guy, but you actually had to work with electronics in Paris. Was that correct? That came up on site YouTube. You put on this week with the Matthew someone big band.
Oh yeah. Well, that was kind of it wasn't really that I had to work with electronics. It was that the electronics had to work with a live big band on stage, and this was a thing that I was involved in for a number of years, where we would have a big band on stage, which would be sampled and smashed up live as the gig went on. We would play the music, and the guy whose project it was, he would be doing all this stuff with various electronics and sampling and putting all these layers on what the band was playing. But we just got up there and played, and then he put this other veneer on top of it. So I didn't really feel that I was having to adapt. It was just like I was doing what I would normally do, and the electronics and the live sampling and the loops and everything we're just taking what we were doing and just put another layer on it. And really, electronics is not my world.
So I obviously watched it all the way through, and so it captured you in a quite jovial way, as I say. What facial expression made you pull at that particular point in this kind of I don't think anyone's seen you in there before.
Somebody in the band must have made an absolute clunker of a mistake. There must have been some awful wrong notes or a missed cue or something for me to respond that way. It's
absolutely hilarious.
My usual very, very calm and expressionless demeanor behind the drums can often be diverted if somebody plays something terribly, terribly wrong.
Yeah. Okay, I'm called it diverse. I'm actually going to be kind of divert here. Pete, very quickly, what's your choice of footwear when playing drum kits, please?
My choice of footwear?
Yeah.
Just a very nothing too, just a very, very thin sole that kind of. So can have the connection with the pedals. I mean,
Okay.
if I wear something with a very like a thick sole, I don't really feel I can connect. You know.
Okay, thank
Something
you,
like
Rob.
Doc
Rob,
Martens.
Rob, what's your choice of footwear when playing the drums, please? Quickly.
Well, Cuban heels,
Yeah.
Doc Martin boots, and these bad boys, Converse.
Right.
Those three are my go-to.
Okay. Well, I'll show you mine because mine are right next to me. As I say, they're very, very thin sole. They're like very flexible. They are Nike. I wear Nike trainers, so they fit me well. Very, very light. They also are in black, so I can wear these with my DJ. Which comes to me, Scott. Flip flops.
That's
Flip
right.
flops, Scott. What's that all about?
Oh yeah, I saw that, and the Drumeo, flip flops and Drumeo, you know,
Flip flops.
that combo.
Yeah.
Was that a case of, oh no, I forgot my footwear, I'm just going to do what I
No.
did because it was a hot day? It's
I
say my father always told me never to drive in flip flops, so I'm driving my bass drum pedal, so I can't wear flip flops. But go on then, explain flip flops.
I wear flip flops pretty much much as I can, or barefoot. I like to be barefoot quite a bit. But most of the time, like I just kind of came up with this method. I remember, like, you know, like we were talking about how big cymbals are cool now, but you know, when I was coming up, everyone was really into small cymbals and 12-inch hats, 13-inch hats, 14 or 15-inch fast crash, and maybe you have 3 or 4 or 5 toms because it's the high fusion thing, right? That was like the trend. And then, you know, long story short, like with everything I've been through, I just had to get to the point as a performance, especially like when I started doing clinics and festivals, opening up for like Billy Cobham and Tom Famularo and Virgil Donati and Donnie Rabb and like all these amazing people that I'm just not there yet, you know. Like, there's a million reasons to be psyched out, right? What I ate, what I didn't do, did I not practice enough? Did I, you know, like, what is it? And I just got to the point, like, screw it. When I sit down and play a drum kit, I'm going to play that drum kit. It doesn't matter how it's tuned, what's going on. That's just what I'm going to do. And when it came down to same thing with like shoes, like not worrying too much. Like, I love to wear flip flops. I wear socks. I'll go barefoot. I'll wear boots. Whatever it is, I'm going to sit down and play. That's just kind of my favorite thing. So I actually feel comfortable in flip flops, and I like it when I'm teaching because people can actually see what my foot is doing versus what my shoe is doing. They can see if there's any pressure points going on with all my foot. I think my pods are going to die here in a minute. So I'm just really comfortable with that. But I have some Tom shoes, like what Pete was saying. I prefer a thin sole, dancing shoes, something a leather sole, something that has a very good connection so I can feel. So I feel like I'm dancing on the pedal, not like attacking it.
Yeah, as I say, when I saw that, because it's I think it's hat, bass, and snare. That's just that, isn't it? You're being, you know, it's the called creativity. You know, it's like, where can you go with this? And it's just like amazing. So actually, what you actually did there, and then obviously, then I saw the flip flops, and then it was
And the headband.
yeah, it was absolutely big respect because I say I can't wear flip flops at the best of times, so let alone actually playing a drum kit with it. Guys, I've just oh yeah, it's got. These sessions go so quickly, and thank you very much for watching. We've only got 10 minutes left, so please get your questions in to Scott or any other panel, please. You know, so I don't want you to be disappointed because we've only got 10 minutes left. So get your questions in. So just write them in the comments below. And I say, if you can't, then obviously you haven't liked our Facebook page. So please do like our Facebook page, and then obviously you'll be able to comment. So yeah, so absolutely fantastic evening. But we're not finished yet. But please, any questions, please put them in the comments below. I just want to hit on something regarding the situation we're in, obviously, because obviously we've all had lots of time to practice recently. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but it's what kind of thing do you actually practice at home to enhance your creativity? Is it just one thing, or is it a couple of things? Is it like playing along to something else and try and recreate that in a different style? Just for the people who are watching, because we people are aware we're sort of running just a trial cycle courses online at the moment, and we're actually at our final week next week. And we had a very good session. It's basically boredom in practice, which it's a session I love giving because we only concentrate on a couple of things, and those couple of things ended up being an hour and a half. The creativity, what you can do, and we discussed about stuff with your teachers. If you're going to see teachers and stuff like that, they'll tell you to maybe have you thought about doing this way? And then they go, oh great, I'll do that thing that way. But what people don't realise is that your teacher's given the tool, not just do that thing that way, but everything else, what you can discover to do that way. But they haven't got enough time to discuss everything else, it's just that one thing. So, if people out there saying, to students, from teachers to students saying, have you tried doing this way with that one to make that difference? You can do this. Try it with everything else that you've learned so far to make creativity. But I want to come to you guys. So, is there anything that you've basically just for creativity-wise, have you gone? So, do you know what? This is the one thing I'm going to see what I can do with it. Rob, is there anything?
In this lockdown period, it's difficult for all of us, and these things are highly subjective, as they should be, and there should be a million one answers to this, and they're all correct. There are no wrong answers. But for me. Actually, it's great because this whole thing we've been talking about today about creativity, following those going down through those pathways that you think I shouldn't go down there. I've actually started, for the last 4 months now, 5 months, going down those pathways. So it's been an extremely selfish thing in a way because I can't pass on like, oh, you should practice this, that to someone else. But for me, it's been highly creative because I've actually gone down there. I've completely gone down there, and what it's done is enlightened me to bring things back that I can share with other people with some exercises. And I've got some clinics coming up that I can and sort of can't talk about right now, but where I'm starting to put them, I'm sort of formulating them into things I can share with other people. But if I hadn't gone down that pathway, as I say, it's highly personal, but I've managed to bring things back that I can share with other people. So I've been enjoying being able to go down the rabbit hole, basically, and just really going nuts and allowing myself to let my imagination go crazy. The thing is, if you watch enough David Lynch films and you're an artistic person and you're into music, that stuff is going to come out in other ways. That's the only way I can kind of describe it. So, like I said, praise be to David Lynch, and going down there and coming back with some really interesting ideas. I can then throw some light on these ideas from the darkness. So that's where I've been.
Right. Amazing. Down the rabbit hole. So Alice in Wonderland. You've been in Alice in Wonderland. Fantastic.
I've been in Alice in Wonderland with a bit of a razor head and Mulholland Drive and a few other things. Yeah.
Pete, you've been quite creative over, obviously, the lockdown people, as everyone knows, with sort of lockdown licks originally, obviously your Patreon page. And obviously, have you got any one kind of thing they can give to people, basically, to try and be creative in their own way? And also, in the last week, you've been very creative as well, haven't you?
What have I done in the last week?
Well, haven't you been doing another couple of books for?
Oh yeah, I have started. Well, yeah, I have. I mean, all the material is long since written. It's just a matter of editing it and pulling it together. I mean, creativity is a state of mind. It's a lifestyle choice. If you want, or if all you want to do in your practice session is pick up the stick control book and play through the flam pages, and if that makes you feel good and that ticks your boxes and satisfies you, then that's fine. But I prefer to practice at all times in a context that is as close as possible to what music is going to require from me. And that's about being creative. That's about doing things in the moment. And I have a whole set of methods in place that enable me to explore that every day. And it's just like certain key concepts that I come back to constantly about stickings, about orchestration, about time, about groove, about independence. And I just view everything through the prism of these methods. And consequently, it means that the time that I invest in practice pays off. It pays dividends. And, practice is an investment of time, and like any investment, you want to get the maximum return for the smallest possible investment. Certainly I do. and I'm sure everybody else does as well. So that's how I look at it. It's about keeping the context of the practice as close as possible to what's going to be going on when sooner, hopefully, rather than later, I'm back out there playing some music with some other musicians.
Fantastic, thanks, Pete. I want to leave the last word to Scott. So I'll tell you what I've been doing is I've been, as I say, there's lots and lots of videos and great advice out there, some great exercises and all that. But I've been taking a few of those exercises, learning them, and then basically going this with them. To see what we've done. I think I've talked about this before. It's like the Gavin Harrison one where your hands are in paradiddles in 4s, but your feet are in 3s. Well, I basically orchestrated on the toms, and I put my 4s. So I learnt that, but then I put my feet in 3s. But I thought, well, I'll put it in 4s, and I'll put it into 3s, and I'll put it to 2s, and it goes back 3s, and 4s again, while still orchestrating with my hands, kind of thing. To see, and then, as Pete say, that you can discover what you can actually then do from it. We talked about earlier, and I say I've never ever used it in a gig, but you discover what you can do. The creativity go, well, actually, I can do this now, and it becomes then second nature. So hopefully, when we do go out, I'm not going to say my solo basically be doing that because that'd be rather boring. But I've been taking these things and then basically going this way with them. That's been discovering, my creativity from other people, getting other people's ideas, and then basically just let's go another theory with them. So that's what I've been doing amongst other stuff. So Scott, from obviously you have been coined as one of the creative drummers of your generation, and also was it in March this year you was it top 10 of solo drummers? Was all right.
Top 5 educator.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Top 5. Yeah.
Soloist.
Yeah. So
top
amazing.
Soloist, top 5 educator in there.
Yeah. Have you got one thing that you can, because we can talk about many things, but just one thing that people at home, if they, if they're sitting down, tomorrow at their practice session, how can they be creative? Can you give them a little tip or a hint or an idea?
Well, I mean, there's 2 things I'm going to say right off the bat, and people may argue with me, but if you want to get creative, if you want to work on your sound, your color, your texture, your dynamics, your groove, your feel, your versatility, your awareness, self-awareness of rhythm, everything that we're trying to do behind the kit, start using brushes. Every day. Use brushes every damn day. And go through the brush rudiments, the rudiments as I call them, use the regular rudiments with the brushes and treat the brushes as a drumstick, treat them as brushes, and figure out what else you can do, because they will teach you how to defy odds in so many ways. Like every little weird technique I figured out with the drum kit, I learned because of the brushes, right? So if you want to look at a tool that can help you and it can be really exciting because you can use it, brushes everywhere all the time. That's a big thing. And then the other thing is you just need to allow yourself as a person to take risks and make mistakes when you're practicing, when you're playing and just having fun in your practice room behind the drums, and allow yourself to just be goofy. If you need to have a glass of wine and then sit behind the drums and say, let's have some fun, then go ahead and do that. Like the way I learned, my buddies we'd get back from the bar, and I always ritually had a snare drum and brushes in my living room. And we'd get back from the bar to have our nightcap, and then they would all throw stuff at me. And if I couldn't make music with whatever they threw at me, they punched me in the arm. So I learned pretty damn fast to get creative and to entertain them. So you could also take that route. Either one.
Yeah. Violence is not permitted, but yeah, but no. Well, that's one way to learn on the job, isn't it? I suppose. Guys, thank you very much for watching. So Terry Christensen and Maya Sedak, thank you for watching. Just logged on. You have to say, if you've interested the last 5 minutes, this will be on our YouTube site. I'll say we'll be on Facebook, but we'll do our YouTube site. You basically just type in either Palace Drum Clinic in YouTube or Matthew Green, and you go straight to my page. And also, please actually like the YouTube page as well, because obviously once I get to 100 subscribers, then I can actually call it the Palace Drum Clinic, which will be amazing, because it's all about that. It's not about me at all. So thank you very much for watching. Just a couple of people basically saying, Joe Morris, we were talking about the PD courses earlier. PD course is cool. Learned lots from creativity from my new teacher. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming along to those courses. So yeah. So again, Glyn Jones, thanks guys. Yeah. So thank you ever so much for watching. That's the most thing actually out there, because obviously we will talk to ourselves about many things, as we always do. But it's love brushes, so agree with Scott, and that's from Canada. Paul Fox. Thanks, guys. It was no less than a masterclass. Well, thank you very much. It's always nice to know that you appreciate these sessions. So we'll be back next week at 8:30 live on Facebook. But if you get bored, want to know about more, or miss us during the week, obviously go to palacedrumclinic.com. Loads of things on there to watch, as well as what's coming up. Obviously, we have got our group on Facebook, which is the Palace Drumming Club, which is a bit more interactive. So it's just a private club for all your Palace drum needs as well. And obviously the Instagram thing as well, you see on Thursday evenings, which I do believe this week we have got Nuna Drums, Nahia, she's from Argentina. She's 21 actually on Thursday, lost connection, so we're going to do it again. And then the following week we have the godmother of drumming, would you believe, Dorothea Taylor on there. So please watch those. They'll be absolutely amazing. So we've got lots of things coming up, and lots of things coming up in the future as well. So you can only find about it, obviously, if you follow us on Facebook or on the website or on Twitter or basically everywhere, really. But it's my absolute pleasure to just say thank you again to my amazing panel. Without, I'll be completely lost in my own drumming world. So thanks, Pete, again for your wise wisdoms, and thanks, Rob. Thanks, Rob, for everything else, really. And many big thanks as well to our special guest, Scott Pellegrom. Thank you, Scott, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. And again, it's been an hour and a half. It's just zipped past. So thanks again, everyone. So everyone, please stay safe. And we're not going to get too excited too soon, although things are opening up. But just remember, keep staying safe, and we get back to what we want to do very, very shortly. So everyone, please stay safe, and you take care now. So it's good night from all of us. Thanks very much for watching. See you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.